Okay, so we are reconvening the meeting, and at this point in time, we are moving on to item B of the non-action items. City manager, actually, if the clerk could read the item, and then we'll move on to city manager.
B is discussion regarding the 2021 City of Topeka operating budget.
City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, we continue to move forward in our process of considering the 2021 operating budget. So I'll introduce Jessica Lemondola, Finance Director, to go ahead and move forward with tonight's presentation. Thank you.
Hi, Council. Good evening. Today we're going to focus on some of the internal service funds. So we have IT joining us first, and then Public Works will be joining to discuss the fleet fund, facilities, parking, and then the citywide sales tax. So just in a minute, they'll join us and lead you through that discussion. But just as a reminder, next Tuesday, we'll be discussing the utilities departments. So that's something we will be sending out the line by line and additional information that we have. And so we'll be looking for those questions. As we discussed earlier, the 28th will be the public hearing. And then the 11th, we're still targeting for budget adoption. So we currently are working off of 4 different sets of questions, and we will be supplying those answers over the next couple days, hopefully. If you do have additional questions, or if you are looking at the possibility of amendments, if you could let us know so that we can help you model those changes out to see what other funds or other impacts it might have on the overall budget. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mark and Sherry to discuss the IT fund. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, City Manager. I apologize, but I don't have a camera connected to my computer. Obviously, Sherry does. I don't, so we're going to have to fix that. The IT fund budget starts on page 61 of your budget book. The fiscal 21 operating budget has been reduced by approximately $100,000 due to the elimination of 2 positions in IT over the past 18 months. This budget reduction has resulted in a cost savings for departments through the reduction in IT fees. The elimination of these 2 positions was done voluntarily to help the departments financially. One of the positions eliminated was our vacant web developer position. We're outsourcing a portion of this work to ensure we can still post documents to the city website and to make small changes. However, not be able to perform any website redesign anytime in the near future. So being very brief, are there any questions about the fiscal 21 IT operating budget?
Questions for Mr. Biswell or Ms. Schoonover with regards to the budget? There's none. Thank you very much.
Truthfully. Could you?
Oh, Councilwoman Hiller?
I don't know that I've got questions. It was very difficult to hear, so apologize for that.
It's difficult to hear me.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, I'll try my speakerphone.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize for that. Okay, I've also been asked to discuss the fiscal 21 IT CIP projects, just to kind of cover those again. We have 3 IT CIP projects included in the fiscal 21 IT budget. The first project is $150,000 for cloud services. Cloud services consists of 2 cybersecurity solutions and a cloud-based data backup service. The second project is a project to construct a generator pad and enclosure. The estimated cost is $60,000, but I don't anticipate the project will actually cost that much. I just kind of want to be on the high side rather than coming in low. I think it's important to note that CIP project dollars come from the IT fund balance and not actually from IT fees. So that wraps up the discussion about the fiscal 21 IT CIP project. So are there any questions?
Any question? You may proceed.
Okay, with that, I'd like to turn the floor over to Sherry Schoonover for just a few minutes so she can brief everyone on a new project that's currently underway.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. I just wanted to update you on a project that we have been working on for quite some time. We were able to roll out 4 weeks ago a customer portal that allows the constituents now to make payments in one location rather than multiple. That has been a desire of the council and us for a very long time, and we were able to do so. So as of this moment, there are 7 different classifications that the constituents or customer can pay, and in the future we're going to be rolling out a lot more. Right now it would include BID, Business Improvement District, planning, code, false alarms for police. So the intent is that we go through all of the different departments and basically eliminate the payment processes that currently use and bring it all under one umbrella. With the current rollout, we were able to eliminate 2 of those payment processes, what's going to make it a lot easier for the department and for finance. Any questions?
Questions for Sherry? Yes, Councilwoman Ortiz.
I don't have a question. I'll just be glad when we get to the part where our constituents can use their check by phone. We have a lot of elderly that are still on that. I did talk to, I'm trying to think of her name in your department, because I've been told for a few months that we can do this, but we can't. And she did realize that, and she was going to bring that to the process. So I'll be glad when we can do that, and then that'll cover everybody, including myself, who still uses a check. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is it Jason's turn or Jessica's?
So next up, I think we're going to go to Public Works, and I believe Hannah is going to walk us through fleet facilities and parking, and then Jason will walk us through the citywide sales tax fund. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you, Jessica. Madam Mayor and Council. So to start off, I know there's been a lot of conversation on fleet, so I want to provide a little bit more context for you. So bear with me as I give a little bit more insight to what this department entails. From snowplows to water and sewer maintenance trucks, road paving equipment, police and fire vehicles. Fleet Services Department maintains more than 1,050 vehicles and pieces of equipment available for service more than 9,200 hours a day, and covers more than 1.8 million miles a year. So a lot of equipment doing a lot of important work across the city. Our Fleet Services Department are spread across 3 different shops. We have our light duty shop, which is primarily our PD shop, our fire, and our heavy equipment shop. Each shop has 1 shop supervisor and a cumulative of 15 different mechanics across all. 14 of these mechanics are ASC certified, and across PD and fire, we have 8 out of 12 that are also emergency vehicle certified. We place a lot of emphasis around training our mechanics to make sure they can offer our departments the highest quality service. Currently, our Fleet Services contracts out a number of services that are typically based out of highly specialized repairs or need specialized equipment. For example, we contract out body work, transmission rebuilds, and items such as dump truck tire replacements, as they require specialty cages for safety purposes. So before we dive into some of the specific questions that I want to go ahead and preemptively address, want to review how our fleet services are actually billed out. So each month, all the specialty services, as well as that we vend out, special services that we vend out, and any parts that are used are billed out monthly to the departments at cost. So there's no additional markup charged to the department each and every month. The fleet services that they pay annually that we talked through on the budget that is maintaining flat for 2021 are billed out based on a percentage of labor hours used within the previous full year. So it's not billed out in accordance with any specific service that was provided. So, for example, we don't bill out 500 p.m. or, 500 maintenance checks. We bill out it based on a cumulative number of hours. So with that, moving into, one of the conversations that we've had a lot around is PM. In particular for light duty vehicles and those classes that are associated with them. To provide some context, the PMAs, otherwise oil changes and tire rotations, make up about 885 or 24% of our total work orders every year. Out of these, about half of them are PD specific with 470 annual. For the purposes of some price comparisons, we've broken out our annual billing, which is the total cumulative of our shop overhead with our annual maintenance or annual operational budget against our billable hours for an average of about $88 per hour internally. So to help with that, that gives some context to the number that we've talked about and we've heard council reference before, which is a PMA for PD is approximately $110. This is with the average completion time of just over an hour by our ASC and emergency vehicle certified mechanics. This is due to a very thorough inspection that is inclusive of standard recommended items that are done regardless of the shop, as well as additional checks for emergency components, including but not limited to all emergency lights and equipment, additional seatbelt inspections because of the equipment that the officers wear tend to wear down on some of the seatbelts, and other miscellaneous checks that are necessary per vehicle. In a private shop, PMAs are typically completed by a lube tech. So for those of you who are not as familiar, they are entry-level mechanics that don't usually carry any sort of ASE or certification outside of potential specific online certifications done by that shop. It takes them approximately 45 minutes to an hour, and on average for a personal vehicle costs around $60. While this does not reflect any price based on scale, for comparison, wanted to kind of give more of an apples and apples component. So if we break down our PMA to approximately 45 minutes and reduce some of the additional inspections, that would reduce our cost to about $80, which is still 33% higher. So still an opportunity for us to discuss. So kind of with that, we're open to the idea of discussing additional opportunities for privatization, but would like the guidance from this body as to what measures will define a successful engagement. What kind of items should we really target to make this the most advantageous to all of our departments to make sure we're getting what we would like out of it? So with that, I'll lead right into some of the highlights on the 2021 budget and then open it up for questions. For 2021, fleet expenses are down 7% or $230,000 from 2020. Similar to other departments, fleet has reduced travel and training, just under $6,000, as well as other commodities such as motor fuel and general supplies. The largest is the capital outlay from the Faster Web implementation that is budgeted for 2020 and currently underway in the amount of $225,000. These reductions are necessary to hold flat the internal fees while offsetting the increase of employment expenses, which is 80% of the fleet's total operating budget, which was driven by approximately $30,000 in increases due to labor agreements and an increase in property insurance of about $15,000. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Any questions or comments? Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry, I had just a little bit of trouble hearing the information around privatization. Can you just repeat that for me one more time? Again, my apologies.
Absolutely. So there's two components. We do currently privatize a number of specialty services already. Those kind of services are inclusive of bodywork, transmission rebuilds, and other specialty ones, such as the example I gave of replacing out dump truck tires that require additional safety measures such as cages. In terms of a PMA, in looking at that oil change and tire rotation, internally for an apples-to-apples comparison on about a 45-minute job, it's approximately $80 internal, or for a dealer in town, on average it's about $60.
Okay, thank you.
Does that satisfy your, oh, Councilman Duncan?
Just kind of a quick question. Have we ever,
The volume is muted for us, thank you.
no. Have we had either recently or recent past being, or plans to have any discussions with the county on some combination snow removal efforts? And the reason I ask is I know that I've been talking with some of them, they've got some interest in having that conversation. I just didn't know if we have interest in that in the future or any plans to have such conversations. Thank you.
Councilman Duncan, to answer your question, we have talked with the Public Works Director, Kurt Niehaus, and have a working agreement on shared kind of those border streets. But beyond that, we've not had any other discussions about combining snow removal efforts.
Other comments or questions? Okay, I see nobody asking more questions.
Okay, we'll move on to the next internal service.
All right, so next on our internal service list is facilities. Our facilities team is responsible for supporting and maintaining more than 140 owned city-wide facilities, including a range of office space to vehicle bays and food facilities. In 2021 budget year, facilities is following the guidance of maintaining flat internal service fees again, with the largest adjustment to the budget being a shift from personnel lines into contractual services. This is a result of reducing our FTEs by 4, specifically related to janitorial services, which is approximately $130,000 in salary and benefits. This allocation is going to go into privatizing our janitorial services for a larger percentage of our facilities. This effort has been challenged to date. So for full disclosure with the council, the RFP that we did go out on and awarded approximately a month ago has already had to have a failure of contract. So we are looking to reframe this. Out of the three responses we got to our initial RFP, there was a very large price discrepancy between the low bidder and the next two that came back of almost a 250% difference. So due to the underperformance and the contract being void, we're looking to explore, what service level we're going to come back with. But to provide some context to what the 2021 budget looks like from a financial standpoint, we had privatized all of our facilities essentially, with the exception of the LEC and City Hall due to some additional security requirements. The salary savings we were anticipating was about $130,000. The low bid contract was bidding out at approximately $83,000. The second highest bidder was $297,000. So there is a sizable gap in terms of what those contractual services will look like to privatize that function of facilities. So we're currently working through what that means, and we'll follow through with that in the future with an additional RFP that will be put out based on some revised service levels. So outside of the janitorial services for facilities, we contract out work as needed with when the level of experience or tools needed for a particular job are not something we have on staff or too costly to bring internal. So outside of large projects, to give you a scale, there are contract service agreements currently in place for electrical, plumbing, and mechanical services. These hourly rates for these licensed agreements range from $50 to $80 for regular hours, $75 to $117 for overtime and off hours, and price markup for parts of approximately 15 to 30% dependent upon the company. So with that, I will open it up for questions on facilities.
Questions? Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you. Thank you so much for these efforts. It sounds like at least a couple departments are working to try and respond to suggestions that we outsource our work. I happen to have the line item budgets that Ms. Lamondola sent out yesterday, I guess. And I did have a question. I thought that you had said in the text maybe, or maybe just this evening, that you had reduced the staff by 4 employees?
Yes, 4 FTEs.
4 FTEs, yet the budget only goes down by $70,000. Were there corresponding raises or something like, I mean, it didn't seem like much of a savings somehow.
I think we have you guys muted somehow. I think they were dialing in on a phone that got disconnected, is what it looks like.
Yeah, because it seems like they're talking, but we can't hear anything.
Yeah, we lost out on their audio.
City manager, is there anything that you would like to add while we're trying to get any contact with them to try to help answer that question?
Yeah, I think I see Jason. I think he might be dialing back in, but I think that, you know, if you look at the numbers, there's reductions in the personnel services, but there are changes in contractual services and also in the commodities level. And so I think that's why the difference occurs there within the budget, that there isn't that much savings within the individual line, within the individual department.
Well,
So,
that was what I had seen, that there was just a drop of not even $100,000 on when it was supposedly 4 FTEs that were cleared, and then, yeah, 130,000 up in the contracted services, and then it's exactly what you were talking about, city manager. There's 160,000 that wasn't there at all before for supplies. And I thought, well, maybe that was someplace else. And it did come out almost even between the 2 years nonetheless.
Jessica?
Okay. Yeah, so I just want to confirm we're talking about facilities, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so those positions, that 89,000 decline does represent the salary portion for those 4 maintenance workers.
Wow, they weren't making very much full time. I guess I observed that. I had questions about it in general, but also I really appreciate the efforts. But if it sounds like this whole thing is sort of a work in progress to see whether outsourcing makes any sense, and that you're going to continue working on it.
That's our intent, yes.
Yeah.
I think Public Works is back.
Yes, sorry, I think we're back.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Wonderful, yes.
Apologize for that. Enjoy the technology. So, yes, it is a work in progress.
Just didn't hear all the conversation that was going on.
Yeah, we didn't hear any of the conversation, so sorry to try to pick up kind of in the middle of it. It is a work in progress. When we initially built the 2021 budget, we had just agreed to contract out with the low bid based on the RFP that we had put out on the street for janitorial service. We are going to reevaluate what those look like and understand the costing implications of that, and then make a decision going forward if that is a sustainable path for facilities to continue to contract out janitorial, or if we need to look at other options. I think we kind of heard the tail end of Jessica confirming the cost reduction associated with the maintenance worker 1 or the janitorial staff. I know that does seem like a very low number to have 4 FTEs reduced, but as kind of mentioned earlier, these are one of those positions within the city that are at a lower hourly wage, so they're not high-paying positions. Were there any other specific questions that we missed the commentary on?
I don't think so. I guess overall, I'm really appreciative of how thoroughly you all are analyzing your cost per unit and cost per hour, depending on what it is. And I appreciate the continued look at it and have a fair amount of confidence at this point that you'll make the best decision for us. So thank you. That's it, Mayor.
All right, additional comments or questions? Seeing none, you may proceed.
So on to the final one that you're going to have me for parking. For parking is responsible for 7 parking garages, 8 surface lots, and over 3,000 on-street parking stalls, about half of which are near in the downtown business district. There has been a lot of conversations over this last year happening with the downtown stakeholder groups regarding future development downtown and parking infrastructure, which is some of the questions we've gotten from the council thus far. And staff has been working to implement several of the 2017 parking study recommendations that was approved by this body, ranging from out-of-state license plate lookup to updated garage entry and exit systems, as well as digital permits and soon-to-come license plate enforcement technology. So before we get into some of the changes in the 2021 budget, just to reiterate, parking is an enterprise fund. So this means that the department operates solely on the revenue it generates through the parking rate and parking tickets. There's no general fund contribution made to this department, and that is inclusive of debt that is currently issued by the department, is also paid by the department. So no additional funding. In 2021, the biggest adjustment in terms of personnel was 3 full-time positions were eliminated for a total savings of $155,000. This included 1 parking enforcement officer, 1 parking maintenance worker, and a system developer. These positions had been strategically left vacant for almost a year or so in some of the cases, to see what the technology that we were implementing downtown was going to do to our operational efficiency and to evaluate whether these positions were needed going forward. Based on what we know now about the technology we're implemented, we felt comfortable going ahead and eliminating these from our operational budget, giving us a little bit more flexibility for some of the other changes that we had to absorb. So the largest other increases that we incurred were contractual services of about $100,000 for pocket park maintenance, a property insurance increase of $140,000. This was from $68,000 in 2020 up to $204,000 in 2021, so a sizable increase for this department. An additional capital outlay for our parking garages of about $600,000. There were some shifts in your line item budget between other funds and the capital line that you'll notice, but the net was about $600,000. Based on the fund balance going into 2021, some of these capital outlays for garage repairs could be impacted. With the COVID impact in 2020, we've experienced a reduction in our expected revenues of about $600,000, and we'll continue to monitor as the balance of the year plays out. The 2021 budget is reflective of a low impact projection that Jessica had previously shared with the council a couple months ago. So we continue to evaluate as we get further in and continue to forecast out. There are various, in addressing the privatization question, there are various privatized models out there for parking, and we're definitely open to explore the different opportunities where it makes sense. Given the limited amount of private parking within Topeka, I'm unaware of any private organization that's actually dedicated to parking operations in totality like other cities have, but I'm open to look outside if we can define what that desired outcome would be for our parking infrastructure. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Councilman Duncan.
In reference to the pocket park maintenance, can someone just explain to me, I guess it's a twofold question, is that a new expense for the city or an expense that we're just moving from one area to another department?
Jason's gonna get that one.
Councilman Duncan, that expense was previously in the Public Works Administration budget. We have a contract with DTI where they're responsible for maintenance of the pocket parks that was developed kind of at the end of the Kansas Avenue project. And so that's a long-term contract we have with them. So in order to meet the general fund reduction targets, we move that expense over into the parking fund. And that does also include the landscape maintenance. We contract out through a bid process for landscape maintenance of the landscaping along Kansas Avenue, and so that was also shifted into the parking fund.
Thank you.
Additional questions from the body? Okay, seeing none. Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you. I guess I'm troubled by this. We've all spent probably the last 2 years looking at projections for the parking fund, all the things that were needed for the garages and on street, and projections and balancing out. We know that the estimate we were given was that because we simply stopped charging the fees in the garages and on street for a number of months because of COVID, that we're down about $500,000. And what I recall was that I didn't pull out my downtown parking study, but that without raising rates and doing a variety of different things with the technology, the fund was on its way to bankruptcy in about 2024. And I asked about this the other day. Obviously, cutting 3 positions helps that balance, but we're looking at just 2021 here. What's happening? And no additional revenue planned when originally some rate increases were supposed to go into effect even here in 2020, but certainly 2021. In a nutshell, what is this doing to the whole plan?
So, in a nutshell, with the reduction in expected revenue, we're going to have to reevaluate the priority and the rate in which we impact the deferred maintenance of our parking garages. Because when we were talking about the long-term state of the fund, a lot of that was built off the general assumption that we would continue to fund a minimum of $400,000 annually to go into a parking reserve dedicated to maintaining our infrastructure, as well as catch up on a number of deferred maintenance items that had been identified in the 2005 parking assessment. We're currently engaging with a firm through our RFP process to redo the assessments for the garages so we can have a better prioritization and a better understanding of what the current state is, to understand what the long-term financial implications will be of deferring some of this maintenance even further, as well as helping capitalize on the dollars that we do have. We still will need to have additional conversations about some of the extra modernization and commodities we want to have, such as security cameras, outside garage signs that show occupancy, and some of those other efforts to improve our overall structure downtown as a means to help fund it. So the biggest impact, to kind of summarize, will be to the amount that we have left to address those maintenance concerns.
Well, if I can just throw some comments in there, I've sort of lived and breathed that for some of this time that we've been doing this, as well as with downtown, and I think it's really a critical part of having our downtown fly. So it did trouble me to move any dollars over into that already fragile enterprise fund. So thank you for doing whatever magic you can, but I think as a body we need to protect that fund. And I appreciate the comments from my colleagues about outsourcing, but at this juncture I'm not sure that talking about giving up any of the garages is a good idea. For those that haven't been close to it, part of the key to to what we've done so far, and then you see it in the extended downtown planning that Mr. Fyander and his department are doing, is to make all that work. It's really important to plan where the parking is, and as Hannah says, we don't have another vendor that's developing garages to make sure they're all in the right places and make money. And what I've seen is that if we control those garages, as we're trying to fine tune what the rates are and where they are and where the public parking is and where the leased parking is, we're sure in a better position owning those garages than not. My 2 cents for what that's worth. Thank you.
And to add a little bit more to that, Hillary, we did update, our garage assessment. So we do have data prepared to have those conversations if they do go that direction. But I've definitely been living and breathing it with you this last year. So understand the sentiment completely. And I think we still have, the mechanisms in place to really explore and deep dive into it over the next year. And based on some of the things we're able to do with operational efficiencies, we should be able to still maneuver through and find those opportunities to continue forward with what we need to.
Good, thank you.
And as a point of, sorry, if you don't mind, just a point of clarification for those outside participants that may be listening, the fund is not moving towards bankruptcy. None of the city's funds are moving towards bankruptcy. So although it may be financially challenged and at times we have long-term planning issues that we're trying to address, I just want to make sure that that's clear that this fund is not moving towards bankruptcy. That is a very unique and specific term that some of our outside stakeholders may want to discuss further with us. So I just want to make that clear. That's not this one.
Sorry, it got used.
It's great.
All right. Other questions? Seeing none, you may proceed, Jessica, I think, right? Or is it Dr. Peak?
Dr. Peak will pick up on the citywide sales tax.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lamandola.
Yes, governing body, citywide sales tax is on page 139 of the budget book. And it's a unique fund in the sense that you appropriate this fund as part of the CIP process, but it's also an operating fund that does include some personnel and commodities expenses. So what I'd say with, in the sales tax fund, we currently have 3.8 personnel. This is basically a project manager that oversees a lot of our street projects. We have a construction inspector, engineering tech 2 that assists with construction inspection, and then part-time from another project engineer within city engineering. And that's basically the personnel piece. The biggest changes in this fund for kind of moving forward into 2021 is the adjustments to be in line with revenue projections. So you'll notice within the budget book that this does show basically a decrease, and what that decrease in the budget is we're spending down the fund balance that was here in the fund, as well as looking at that revenue projection. With the sales tax projects, we kind of have 2 cycles of bidding that helps us manage this fund as revenues come in. We have some of the larger rehabilitation projects that we bid out early that will take a full season to construct, or if it's paired with a larger GO bond project, those 2 seasons. And then we have a lot of smaller projects that are like mill and overlay or rehab work. We'll have a first cycle of that goes out in the winter for spring, summer construction, and then we're kind of in that round right now, bidding out that second round for late summer and fall. And so that gives us the ability to adapt the fund with the revenue projections that finance has coming in. And with that, I would stand for any questions on the sales tax fund.
Questions for Dr. Peak on the sales tax fund? Seeing none, Dr. Peak or Ms. Lamandola?
If there's no questions, I believe that will conclude our budget discussion. I sent this email out just a few minutes ago, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware. As we're talking about sales tax and our borrowing and capital plan, the city's AA rating with a stable outlook by S&P was confirmed. So as we prepare for next week's sale, that's always a good sign. And we achieved the highest rating for our short-term notes as well. So just as an update, and then we'll share the results next week of that sale. Brent, did you have any, I'm sorry, City Manager, did you have any additional feedback or questions for Dr. Peak's team or any of the budget discussion?
I think the key that I would say tonight is that you'll see that staff is starting to explore, as the direction was given, what we can do in the area of looking at outsourcing. I think that this is a new process in some areas. We benchmarked ourselves in certain areas, but we understand the desire and we're continuing to explore those possibilities. And I would say this is just the beginning of being able to do that. And what we're trying to do is make sure that we make a smart decision related to those things, because if you stop doing them internally and go outside, it's very hard to get it going again. So we want to make sure that we're developing a system and comparing it and pursuing it as we can.
All right. Thank you all for your work. I did see that email today about the AA rating. Very exciting when those come through. If there's no further discussion on the budget, we will move on to item C, if the clerk would read.
C is discussion regarding the establishment of a special committee to review and make recommendations to the governing body relating to public infrastructure projects.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. At this point, we brought forward a item that relates to the last when we looked at capital improvement projects. And so Jason has worked with Councilman Dobler and helping to develop a committee that at this point would be a special committee, but that it would in turn potentially turn into a long-term committee. So I guess I would turn it over to Jason to make some comments, and then obviously Councilman Dobler. Jason?
Thank you, City Manager. Yes, you're correct. So after the CIP discussion and wanting a process for bringing additional information back to the governing body on specific CIP projects, we discussed internally about the possibility of having the governing body establish a special committee to work through that process. And so what we put before you as a suggestion, and definitely open for comments and discussion, is that this would be a special committee that would have 4 primary tasks at its outset. The first task would be to review and recommend CIP projects for the GEO-funded projects for facilities, sidewalks, and the public works fleet replacement. The desire of the body was that we would bring a list of these projects to the governing body for approval before starting with those expenditures. So we would use this committee as a sounding board to kind of review those lists, develop those recommendations, and bring that back to the full body. The second task would go for basically looking at the Fix Our Streets or citywide half-cent sales tax projects with the criteria the governing body set, that we would go through that. And I think this is important because, you know, we've talked about the performance goal for pavement management where we have a 60 PCI. But if you ask that same question about our alleys, our curbs and gutters, we don't have that same benchmark that we've all agreed on. And I think a discussion with this committee of helping establish that benchmark so that when we bring that list to the body, we can say, hey, here's the goals and priorities you set. This is the list of projects that will meet that, and be able to have that discussion, but have the input of this committee in setting that criteria up. So that would be part of that task 2. And then, like I said, task 3 would actually be the project selection criteria. And then the last task would be basically to evaluate if, you know, the work of the special committee should continue as a standing committee. We know you have a policy and finance committee, a public safety committee that talks about policy issues, but, you know, if you look at your overall budget, your infrastructure spending is very significant, and there's a lot of policy decisions related to that. So maybe a standing committee would be useful for that. So this was a recommendation I developed. I talked with Councilman Dobler a little bit, and just want to say that, you know, it's on discussion tonight because we're looking for feedback. This is our kind of first step. If it's acceptable, we would move it forward for action at the next meeting. If it needed more discussion, of course, we would move at the pace that the body wants to with it. And with that, I'll answer any questions or turn it over to Councilman Dobler.
Councilman Dobler.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and Dr. Pete, thanks for that outline. You know, I think when we made the amendments to the CIP, we talked about, let's kind of start here. Let's start the process here and see how it goes over the next year or so. What I like about the committee that Dr. Peak is proposing here is it allows us to perhaps extend that experiment just a little bit. And I think really appropriate comment. Most cities in their committee structure have something that deals specifically with infrastructure because it tends to be a big part of the budget. I think we all get plenty of complaints and emails about which roads are getting fixed next, where's my sales tax money going, when are potholes going to be fixed, those type of things. I think the opportunity here is to allow a smaller group of the council to focus on some of those issues, particularly the recommendations for project selection. Not necessarily to exclude everybody else, but just perhaps to develop some expertise on the council that can help answer the questions and push some of these projects and pavement management criteria forward. So thank you for this proposal.
Questions for Councilman Dobler and for Dr. Pete? Councilwoman Nager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not a question, just I think that this is a great idea, especially as this is something that we talk about constantly with constituents and with each other, and it is a huge chunk of our budget. So I really support the idea of having a standing committee. Thank you. And thank you for all the work that you guys have put into this.
I concur. Thank you so much, both of you, for all the hard work. It seems like there's no other comments or questions. Oh, Councilwoman Heller.
Well, you were wanting feedback tonight to see where to go with it. I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
And there's a trend, Councilman Dobler. All right, it seems like the trend is that everybody is pretty pleased with this. Thank you so much for both of you for the leadership that you have taken. I appreciate all the work that you guys are doing. If there's no other comments or questions on this item, we would proceed with the public comment. And I am pulling the public comment individuals. The first person is Mary Akerstrom. Oh, Mary was in the front. Is she gone?
No, she's coming up, Mayor. It's just cold.
Okay.
It's freezing in here, council members.
Mary.
Thank you for granting me a little bit of time. I need to express my disappointment. I've lived in Topeka my whole life, and for several decades, I've watched us throw money into the abyss that is Kansas Avenue. Topeka residents do not need another pocket park. We do need public housing. Without affordable housing downtown, the businesses that are downtown only benefit the people that work downtown, and that's why we see a lot of those businesses close up at 6 o'clock. It's not sustainable to keep throwing money at it. Also, I just want to throw this in there, privatizing public works is not in long-term sustainable plan. We've seen too many cities fall apart after they've privatized everything. We do not need more shopping and leisure. We do need jobs with a fair wage. And we need you, council members, to talk to our state about raising that wage for the whole state. As a resident, if I can only find a low-wage job, I won't have the disposable income to enjoy the amenities that are already present in our community. We have to stop sinking money into neighborhoods that already have money. We gotta stop repaving Wanamaker Road and start paving the smaller neighborhoods in East and Central Topeka. We must insist JADO stop playing favorites and find ways to fund businesses in Central and East Topeka. And again, stop giving money to the neighborhoods that already have money. We need funds directed to the blight of White Lakes Mall. We need public internet support if we're going to have 100% virtual school this fall. We do not need funds directed at Visit Topeka. People do not want to visit a town that's falling apart at the seams. We do not need more tourists shopping at Walmart. Evel Knievel Museum can support itself through having that $5 fee at the door. We need funds directed at public housing. We need funds directed at public transportation, and we need a fair minimum wage. Our residents are suffering oppressive poverty. They need $15,000 right now to survive in Topeka, more than we need to be giving $15,000 to new residents to relocate to Topeka. I can appreciate that we want more professionals moving to Topeka with their higher incomes where they can move into that upscale housing. But that's not fair to the rest of us who already live here. Thank you for your time.
You're muted, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Mary. The next person signed up to speak is Mr. Thomas Mother.
That's Muther, by the way.
Pardon me, sir.
No biggie. It's been mispronounced 1,000 different ways over my lifetime. I'm here mostly because I feel like I owe an explanation for something. I was here last week, and I think it probably did not escape your notice. I was pretty angry. But I just wanted you to know that anger was not directed at the council. It was directed at society as a whole. I was actually rather surprised. I very rarely give public comments. I'm not exactly a public speaker. And usually when I do, my affect is usually pretty bland and flat. But for some reason, as I began reciting that speech I'd written, something came over me, and I got very angry. Again, it wasn't directed at you, it was directed at society at large. I guess it just came from years of watching, on the news and whatnot, reading in the newspaper, incidences of black people or people of color being killed for no really good reason by the police, and it just made me angry, just something that had accumulated over time. And it made me wonder, if I felt that angry, how must African Americans feel? I can't even imagine what it must be like to be an African American in this country. In any case, I'm going to continue to advocate for change in our police department and police departments nationwide. I think there's reason to suspect that our police department isn't nearly as bad as some others, but obviously there have been some incidences here. A young man was killed for no good reason, 3 or 4 years ago? And thus, running away is a good reason to be shot. But I would contend that in the whole history of police departments, no police officer has been killed or even seriously injured by a young man running away from them with a gun in his pocket. I would suggest that has never happened. And then there was an incident, 2 years ago? A black man was beaten while he was in handcuffs. I never did hear what the disposition of that police officer, I think his name was Christopher James. Could I ask the council what the disposition of that police officer was? Anybody know?
Sir, that's a personnel matter, and we wouldn't discuss that in a public setting.
So it hasn't been resolved yet, is that?
No, I'm just saying it involves a personnel matter, so.
Well, anyway. Okay, so those two incidents seem to me to indicate that there's still much room for improvement. So don't be surprised if I come back again and speak with some prepared remarks instead of off the cuff like I am today. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Muther. The next person signed up to speak is Mr. Lazone Grace.
Thank you again, members of the City Council. First, I want to express my appreciation for Chief Cochran. I am on the SCPC committee, and I'm very appreciative to his genuine approach of what is happening and what is going on. And even when I spoke with Mr. Pravarnik in the back, I very much appreciate what he is doing and what he is doing for this community. So I'm not trying to say anything to disparage anyone, but I'm just going to be me and I'm going to speak my piece. And I'm going to follow on with what I spoke before, because that was on that issue that was in. This here is on the discussion of equity about all public funding and contracts. I have been coming to this podium probably at least 15 years on this specific issue. I request information. I'll give just a brief, like for the vendor diversity report for the city of Topeka, 2018, out of $91 million spent, African-American businesses received $175,000. This isn't an abnormality, this is the norm. And this is why I keep asking for the information, this is why I keep coming here. Because apparently, and I've been doing this probably for over 10 years, and the numbers have always been the same. What I see is that the policy of procurement that is in place, it was give life to a policy of exclusion that drives inequity and disparity. That unless a policy changes, the processes, practices, and procedures are not going to change. We're just talking. I've came here and shared these information. I've shared recommendations here and to people who are leaders within the community. Over 10 years, nothing has happened. So I'm hoping that if it is acceptable for this type of disparate numbers to go on forever, and you don't want to do any policy change, then people need to stop talking about equity, inclusion, and diversity and all those other things. I shared that article with you, and I've been doing this, I mean, this is dated back to 1998, so this isn't anything new or an issue new that I'm coming here speaking of. Maybe I'm just tired that it still has to be talked about in 2019 or 2020. The other article that I showed first was that Topeka was about change. And then there was the other article, the art of change. The art of change is meaning that people are going to accept that change is going to have to happen. And that change is going to have to be policy. Because if the policy isn't changed on procurement, which means some are going to eat and some are not going to, then there's not going to be any change. I asked, and I sent the email, but it came back, Mr. Pravarnik, Mrs. Washington, and the Chamber Representative Curtis Sneeden, and I would invite the city manager and whoever to prepare some type of an equity plan and statement that would be good for the city and the JADO, so that all future funding or incentives that goes from this point on has some type of a clause for equity in employment, contracting, and anything else that can assure diversity, because there's no reason giving millions of dollars to some company, billion-dollar company, to come here, and then they do not seek us out for employment or for contracts. These are public funds, and what we're talking about with systematic inequity and inclusion is going to demand some type of a policy change. And I hope that you all have the backbone to do that. a policy change that deals with equity. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Graves. Next person signed up to speak is Regina Platt.
Good evening, everyone. Today we stand demanding the following. We demand provisions to overhaul qualified immunity for law enforcement, and this be placed into the actual FOP contract. 2, we demand prohibition on racial profiling. 3, we demand a ban on no-knocking warrants. 4, we demand a ban on chokeholds and classifying it as a criminal offense. If the no chokehold ban is a violation of the contract with the FOB, then that emphasizes that the need to renegotiate the contract. We have to remember Elijah McClain and Eric Garner, rest in peace. 5, we demand establishing a registry of police misconduct maintained by the Department of Justice. 6, we demand an ordinance be put in place to prevent citizens from being shot in the back. Dominique White, Michael Cruz, and Justin Mackey, rest in peace. 7, we demand that officers not be allowed to shoot a moving vehicle. By this, you are acknowledging the life and the lives of all those killed by police brutality and pledge never again. And to do anything less is a sign of open willingness to stand on the wrong side of history. Please stand up. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Platt. The next person signed up to speak is PJ Carter.
Hello, everyone. I come to echo the voice of Miss Regina and also Mr. Gray. We've been coming here, almost 3 years, facing you guys, asking for change. We came, maybe escalated the last time. There was a lot of disputes and a lot of unclear communication, and nothing was happening. Last week, sounds like a bunch of great discussions was happening, and almost not a word has been spoken of it today. It's like we don't need empty conversations. Those demands that were just spoke by Regina, I demand everything. We demand all of that word for word, verbatim. If the no-knock warrant is a issue with the FOP contract, that needs to be renegotiated to the point where, it's clear that's what the community wants. This has been a conversation in and out of these chambers. We know that's what that wants. If the only issue is the contract, you guys have the power to make those adjustments with the contract. So the contract shouldn't be the issue of the holdup of this. It should be, what's the next step? It's conversations after conversations, but what's the next step? What's the plan? What's the strategy? Like, what do you guys need from us? We're showing up, we're protesting, we're marching. It's like, what else do you want? We can go 3 years back, here with Dominique. 10 years back, Mr. Gray, it's like, okay, all right, now it's starting to be upsetting. It's like, what are we gonna do here? The demands have been made, the discussion's been had, you have the language, you know what to do, you have the power to do something. Just like, what else do you need from the community to start making things happen? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. At this point in time, We have announcements. The clerk.
On the 21st agenda, we have 2 appointments to the Board of Plumbing Appeals. We have a resolution on the consent agenda for the Noto Live special event. Action items include an ordinance and resolution for general obligation bonds, Series 2020A. We have a resolution for temporary notes for Series 2020A and B. We have an ordinance removing property from the Dynamic Core Redevelopment District located at 2020 Southeast 6th. We have an item amending governing body rule 3.1 and an ordinance relating to that that'll be removed from committee for report. We have an approval to establish a special committee. We also have an ordinance for healthcare facility revenue bonds for Midland Connection. We have a resolution for Topeka citywide housing market study and strategy. And then we have an ordinance for the execution of search warrants, no knock ban. The non-discussion items include the 2021 operating budget and the 2021 to 2025 consolidated action plan and the 2021 annual plan and budget.
City Manager.
Nothing else tonight, Mayor.
Councilman Duncan. Councilman Lester.
No, sorry. Three quick things, very quick.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said no.
No, I didn't know I was first. I think I was first last week. You threw me off. It's fine. Three quick things. First of all, last week I made a request. I'm going to make it again. I understand if it can't occur until after we do a budget, but I would like to see a presentation to this body on City Hall renovations, and we can talk later about what that entails, but I think this body needs to get an update on where things are at, and I'll make that request a second time. Second thing is, it's hot out there. Tomorrow it's going to be very hot out there. Please watch out for your neighbors. If anyone needs an assistance or you know someone who needs to keep cool, do what you can to help. And this weekend especially is going to be very hot, so just a heat warning for everybody. The last thing is, and it was actually brought up earlier, and I don't know what the city can do about this, but I think we can start to have some discussions with our school districts and our providers, Cox, AT&T, and others. I don't know what the school is going to look like come August and September. I do know that there will be students who are probably at some point going to end up at home. And we have students in areas that do not have adequate internet access. There has got to be a way we as a city can start having some discussions, whether it's putting up some temporary towers, what role can we play to facilitate some of that with those providers to make sure that if kids are home, they're actually getting educated while the schools are trying to provide that. So I wish I had a solution, but I think that's a conversation or some talks we need to have, and I put that out to the Coxes and AT&Ts and others of the world to assist us with that as we move forward. And that's it. Everyone have a good week.
Councilman Lesser?
Nothing for me, Mayor.
Councilwoman Hiller?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll echo what Councilman Duncan has said. I've been asking about broadband all along. My understanding is that somewhere around now, there's some collaborations going on to come up with proposals to the county for COVID money, and if any of that can be used for broadband, or we can get with the school districts and encourage them to get in there. I just hate to miss a chance, and we all did get an email via the city manager, I think, from Cox about some efforts that they've made, but if we think if it's eligible, then whatever participation we can do to help to make sure there's broadband through the winter, through the school year this year, seems like it would be eligible to me. Thank you.
Councilwoman Valeria Alcala.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to give a quick announcement. Please remember, community, that Fiesta Mexicana is having their Taste of the Fiesta drive-by parade. It'll be going in front of the church on the 18th, I think it is. Folks will be there with buckets. We'll accept donations as they drive by at 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. And my understanding is they're going to be looking to do food sales, hopefully in the fall. The other thing, City Manager, is that I had requested from the chief additional information. I think we've all received it. A wealth of information having to do with TPD and the USD 501 schools, more information on use of force, the Chief Citizen Advisory Council, information that has to do with over, I think it is the past several years, arrest, homicides, broken down by race, gender, et cetera. I'm still trying to review that information, so I'm requesting that there be time put on the agenda next week to discuss this. Also, I need to preface this with something that I'm going to say about the FOP contract. I am a hardcore union supporter. I think that unions are what keeps some semblance of going down the drain further in inequality and poverty and lack of living wages, from us really going down that hole even deeper than what we're going already. So unions are integral to the city and so many other places across Topeka and across the country. I think that unions stand in jeopardy much of the time these days. They're being minimized, and you can see that with the increased calls for privatizations. And what we usually know, what happens with that is that when privatization occurs, jobs are going to folks that don't have the benefit of union protections. I support the union's right to negotiation of pay, of overtime, step increases, promotions, and the like. And I say that because we are talking about a lot of good ideas here. Spencer's, Councilman Duncan's ordinance, it seems really just disrespectful to me in a lot of ways that he had that out there for a month without any communication. And Spencer is one of the most communicative guys that I know. And now all of a sudden it's being pulled. I know that we're having a lot of strong dialogues and we're hearing from the community on what needs to be done. This is not only in Topeka, this is happening across the country. We're at a moment in time. And I'm saying that because no matter how much we try to put into place, no matter how many committees that we have, no matter how many committees the chief creates, no matter how many academies that we have, until we deal with the issues of the FOP contract, issues that are in almost every police contract across the United States, these will not be real changes that need to occur. And what I'm saying is that citizens, not only in Topeka, but across the country, when you look at the police contracts, they believe that what these police contracts do is they lead to a lack of transparency. They lead to a lack of accountability. They lead to a lack of reprimand, including the firing and lack of wholeness provided to victims and their families. Why? Because of excessive force, at times deadly force, being used on the citizens of this country. This is what needs to be changed. So you see it happening across the United States, in different localities, in different city councils, at state legislators. But anybody that says that these changes, which are good changes, they're decent changes with ordinances, et cetera, is going to effectively change what is happening, what has happened here, what is happening across the country, we are fooling ourselves. So the FOP contract, it has to be looked at, and it has to be looked at deeply and seriously, because we are at a moment in time that we have not seen since the civil rights movement. And we know things that are getting worse. They are not getting better. And so I just want to put that forward because I'm going to keep at that until, along with citizens that are contacting me about that, to really look at systemic and ongoing change. We are Topeka. We are Kansas, free state. We are Brown v. Board of Education. We can do better. We can be better. I am not anti-union, but I am against unions that we cannot make accountability. Folks that work here and that have access to weapons and to militarization, and that we have no control over it. Thank you.
Councilwoman Ortiz?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to announce that on August the 8th, East Topeka South will be having a cleanup. Please drag your items to the curb by 8 o'clock that morning. Thank you.
Councilman Padilla?
Nothing, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilwoman Nager?
Nothing tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Dobler?
I think I'm done for the night. Thanks.
All right, and with that, there is no other announcements. There's no executive session, so this meeting is this meeting is adjourned. Have a great evening, all. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.